The Viking Age, spanning from 793 to 1066 CE, marked one of the most dynamic and transformative periods in European history. This era began with the infamous raid on Lindisfarne Monastery in northern England and concluded with the Norman conquest of England. During these centuries, Scandinavian warriors, traders, and settlers profoundly influenced the course of European history. The geographical heart of Viking civilization lay in Scandinavia, encompassing the modern nations of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. Norway's dramatic fjords and mountainous terrain shaped its people into skilled seafarers and hardy survivors. Denmark's fertile plains and strategic position controlling the Baltic Sea entrance made it a powerful center of trade and military might. Sweden's vast territories, particularly its eastern regions, facilitated crucial trade routes to the Byzantine Empire and the Arab world through the river systems of Eastern Europe. These Norse societies developed sophisticated political and social structures long before their expansion period. The region was divided into various kingdoms and chieftaincies, each with its own thing, assembly, where legal and political decisions were made. The major power centers included the Danish kingdom, centered in Jelling, the Norwegian kingdoms of Harald Fairhair and his descendants, and the Swedish power base in Uppsala. Viking communities were far more complex than the simple raider stereotype suggests. They established extensive trade networks stretching from North America to the Middle East, trading valuable commodities like furs, slaves, amber, and walrus ivory. Their settlements ranged from farming communities in Iceland and Greenland to trading posts in Dublin, Kiev, and York. These Norse traders and settlers brought their cultural practices and beliefs wherever they went, while also absorbing and adapting to local customs. The spiritual and cultural foundations of Viking society were deeply intertwined with daily life. Their worldview was shaped by Norse mythology, with its rich pantheon of gods and complex cosmology. The great ash tree Yggdrasil, connecting the 9 worlds, served as a powerful symbol of their interconnected view of existence. Religious practices were not confined to temples, but were integrated into every aspect of life, from farming to warfare. The Vikings' remarkable shipbuilding technology and navigation skills enabled their unprecedented expansion. Their legendary longships, capable of both ocean travel and river navigation, were technological marvels of their time. These vessels allowed them to penetrate deep into continental Europe through river systems, establish trade routes across the Atlantic, and even reach North American shores 5 centuries before Columbus. Climate played a crucial role during this period, as the medieval warm period created favorable conditions for exploration and settlement. This warming trend made lengthy sea voyages more feasible and enabled agricultural expansion in previously marginal areas, particularly in the North Atlantic settlements. The era was characterized by remarkable adaptability and innovation. Viking societies were not static, but constantly evolving through contact with other cultures. Their interactions ranged from peaceful trade and cultural exchange to warfare and conquest, leading to the establishment of Viking-ruled territories across Europe, including the Danelaw in England, Normandy in France, and settlements throughout the British Isles and beyond. The Viking Age represents a pivotal period of cultural exchange, technological advancement, and social evolution that helped shape medieval Europe. Their influence extended far beyond their Scandinavian homeland, leaving an indelible mark on the languages, cultures, and genetic heritage of many European populations. This era stands as a testament to human adaptability, the power of cultural exchange, and the enduring impact of societies in transition. In Viking society, the Godi held a position of paramount importance, serving as both a religious leader and a political figure. These priest-chieftains were the guardians of ancient traditions and the vital link between the mortal world and the realm of the gods. A Godi's responsibilities extended far beyond religious ceremonies. They were lawmakers, mediators, and keepers of oral traditions. Their homes often served as both religious temples and community gathering places, where they performed sacrificial rituals called blót and maintained sacred spaces. The warrior preparing for expedition represents a crucial aspect of Viking society. Before departing on raids or trading voyages, these warriors would seek the blessing of the gods through the godi. These ceremonies involved complex rituals, including weapons blessing, reading of omens, and sacrificial offerings to ensure safe passage and success. The warrior's preparation was both physical and spiritual, often involving the creation or reinforcement of protective runes on their weapons and ships. The tribal chief's family played a central role in maintaining social order and continuing traditions. The chief's wife, particularly, often held significant influence in religious matters and was frequently responsible for maintaining household rituals and teaching younger generations. Children of these families were raised with deep knowledge of their ancestral traditions and were expected to maintain important political and religious alliances through marriage and ritual kinship bonds. The role of the shaman, or völva, in Norse society was distinct from that of the godi. These practitioners, often women, specialized in seiðr, a form of Norse magic associated with fate and prophecy. They were both respected and feared for their abilities to communicate with spirits, heal the sick, and glimpse possible futures. Their services were sought during critical moments of community life, particularly during times of crisis or important transitions. King Olaf II Haraldsson, later known as Saint Olaf, emerged as one of the most transformative figures in Scandinavian history. Ruling Norway from 1015 to 1028 CE, his legacy profoundly shaped the religious landscape of Northern Europe. Initially a Viking warrior who raided in England and France, Olaf underwent a profound personal transformation and became a zealous proponent of Christianity. His methods of conversion were often forceful, combining political maneuvering with military pressure to establish Christianity as the dominant religion in Norway. Olaf's approach to Christianization was complex and strategic. While he worked to dismantle traditional Norse religious practices, he often incorporated aspects of Viking cultural traditions into Christian practices to make the transition more palatable. This synthesis created a unique form of Nordic Christianity that preserved elements of the old ways while embracing the new faith. His death at the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030 CE and subsequent canonization transformed him into a symbol of Norwegian national identity and Christian conviction. The interaction between these key figures created a rich tapestry of religious and cultural life in Viking society. The godi represented the old ways, maintaining ancient traditions and community cohesion. The warrior embodied the dynamic and expansive nature of Viking society. The tribal chief's family ensured the continuation of social structures and traditions. The shaman provided spiritual guidance and healing in times of need. Meanwhile, figures like Saint Olaf represented the forces of change that would eventually transform Norse society. These various roles and their evolution throughout the Viking Age demonstrate the complex nature of Norse society and its gradual transformation from traditional paganism to Christianity. Their stories continue to fascinate and provide valuable insights into how societies navigate significant religious and cultural changes while maintaining their core identity and values. The spiritual transformation of Viking society represents one of history's most fascinating religious and cultural transitions. At its core, this period witnessed the profound metamorphosis of an ancient pagan civilization, encountering and gradually embracing Christianity, creating a unique synthesis of beliefs that would shape Northern European culture for centuries to come. The central conflict between Norse paganism and Christianity manifested in various ways throughout Scandinavian society. While Norse paganism emphasized a polytheistic worldview with gods who were powerful yet flawed, Christianity introduced the concept of a single, omnipotent deity. This fundamental difference created significant tension in how people understood their relationship with the divine. The Norse gods were seen as allies in life's struggles, beings who could be negotiated with through sacrifice and ritual, while the Christian God demanded absolute devotion and submission to divine will. The Viking understanding of the connection between life and death was particularly complex and nuanced. In Norse tradition, death was not viewed as an endpoint, but as a transition between different states of existence. The Norse cosmos encompassed multiple realms of the dead, including Valhalla for warriors who fell in battle and Helheim for those who died of natural causes. This sophisticated understanding of the afterlife stood in stark contrast to the Christian concept of a single heaven or hell, creating significant philosophical and theological tensions during the conversion period. Rituals served as essential bridges between the physical and spiritual realms in Viking society. These ceremonies weren't merely religious obligations, but represented crucial moments where the boundaries between worlds became permeable. The blóts ceremonies, where sacrifices were offered to the gods, were understood as direct transactions with divine powers. Seasonal festivals marked the rhythm of the year and maintained cosmic order. These practices were deeply embedded in the social fabric, making their replacement with Christian rituals particularly challenging and contentious. The preservation of cultural identity emerged as a critical concern during this period of religious transformation. As Christianity spread throughout Scandinavia, many communities struggled to maintain their traditional practices and beliefs while adapting to new religious requirements. This resulted in fascinating examples of religious syncretism, where Christian practices were often overlaid with traditional Norse elements. Churches were sometimes built on ancient sacred sites, and Christian saints took on attributes of Norse gods, creating a unique Nordic Christianity. The process of conversion varied significantly across different regions and social classes. Coastal areas and trading centers generally adapted to Christianity more readily due to increased exposure to Christian cultures through trade and travel. Rural areas, however, often maintained traditional practices longer, creating a complex landscape of belief systems that persisted for generations. This geographical and social division added another layer of complexity to the spiritual transformation of Norse society. The role of women in religious practice underwent significant changes during this transition. In traditional Norse society, women often held important religious roles as völvas, seers, and priestesses. The advent of Christianity, with its male-dominated hierarchy, significantly altered these traditional gender roles in religious practice, though some aspects of women's spiritual authority persisted in folk practices and domestic rituals. The impact of this spiritual transformation extended far beyond religious practice. It influenced art, architecture, literature, and social structures. The elaborate wood carvings of Norse mythology gradually gave way to Christian iconography, though often retaining distinctive Norse artistic styles. The oral traditions of skaldic poetry adapted to include Christian themes while maintaining traditional verse forms. Even burial practices evolved, with Christian inhumation gradually replacing cremation and ship burial, though often incorporating elements of both traditions. This period of transformation left an indelible mark on Scandinavian culture, creating a unique religious and cultural identity that combined elements of both pagan and Christian traditions. The tension between preserving ancient wisdom and embracing new spiritual insights generated a rich cultural synthesis that continues to influence Nordic society today. The story of this transformation provides valuable insights into how societies navigate profound religious and cultural changes while maintaining their essential character and values. Viking daily life was intrinsically woven with spiritual practices and rituals that formed the bedrock of their social structure. From dawn to dusk, every significant activity was accompanied by ritual observances that connected the mundane with the divine. The simple act of sharing a meal became a sacred moment when accompanied by offerings to household gods, while agricultural work was preceded by ceremonies to ensure fertility and abundance. The social hierarchy in Viking society was deeply influenced by spiritual connections and religious authority. At the top of this spiritual social pyramid stood the Godi, who combined the roles of chieftain and priest. Their authority stemmed not only from political power, but from their perceived ability to communicate with the gods and interpret their will. This spiritual authority often translated into practical power, as important decisions were made only after consulting the gods through various divinatory practices. Below the Godi, society was structured in concentric circles of spiritual influence. The Jarls, nobles, maintained their own household shrines and conducted private rituals, while wealthy farmers could sponsor community celebrations and seasonal festivals. This ability to facilitate spiritual ceremonies reinforced their social status and cemented their position within the community. Even thralls, slaves, while occupying the lowest social rung, participated in household rituals and were believed to be under the protection of the family's ancestral spirits. The role of priests and shamans was particularly fascinating in Viking communities. Unlike the rigid religious structures found in other contemporary societies, Norse spiritual practitioners operated within a more fluid system. The Völva, or seeress, could come from any social class, and her powers were respected regardless of her origin. These spiritual practitioners were essential in maintaining social harmony, resolving disputes through divine consultation, and providing guidance during critical moments in community life. Ritual practices varied significantly across social classes, but all levels of society participated in the great religious festivals. While wealthy families might sacrifice valuable livestock during blóts ceremonies, poorer families could offer smaller tributes such as food, drink, or handcrafted items. This inclusive approach to ritual practice helped maintain social cohesion while acknowledging economic differences. The spiritual calendar governed much of daily life, with different seasons bringing their own specific rituals and celebrations. The three main seasonal blóts, winter nights, midwinter, and summer, provided a framework around which communities organized their agricultural and social activities. These festivals served as important gathering points where social bonds were strengthened, alliances were formed, and community issues were resolved under the watchful eyes of the gods. Marriage ceremonies exemplified how ritual and social structure intertwined in Viking society. These unions were not merely private affairs, but community events that reinforced social networks and spiritual bonds. The ceremony involved complex ritual elements that called upon the gods to bless the union, while simultaneously establishing or strengthening alliances between families and communities. The education of children included both practical skills and spiritual knowledge, with young members of the community learning their place in both the social and cosmic order. Children from noble families might receive more formal instruction in the myths and ritual practices, while those from humbler backgrounds learned through participation in family and community ceremonies. In times of crisis, whether personal or communal, ritual practices provided a framework for understanding and responding to challenges. Disease, crop failure, or conflict would prompt specific ritual responses, with different social classes playing their assigned roles in these ceremonies. The wealthy might sponsor elaborate sacrificial feasts, while others contributed through prayer, craft making, or ritual labor. The integral connection between ritual practice and social structure in Viking society created a robust and adaptable system that sustained their communities through challenges and changes. This system provided both practical and spiritual guidance for daily life, while maintaining social order through shared religious experiences and obligations. Have you ever known or heard about Viking rituals? What surprised you the most and why? Comment below. We would like to know your opinion. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Medieval Archives to follow our upcoming explorations. The Viking ship burial stands as one of the most iconic and profound ceremonies in Norse culture. When a notable warrior or chieftain died, the community embarked on an elaborate funerary process that could span several days or even weeks. The preparation of the deceased was a sacred duty, typically performed by women of high status within the community. They would wash the body, dress it in finest clothing, and adorn it with significant personal belongings and weapons that marked the warrior's status and achievements in life. The funeral ship itself was carefully selected and prepared, its size reflecting the deceased's status and wealth. The vessel would be drawn up on land and supported by stones or wooden frameworks. Inside, craftsmen would construct an elaborate burial chamber, often resembling the deceased's own great hall in miniature. The body would be placed within, surrounded by grave goods, chosen to ensure a well-provisioned journey to the afterlife. Weapons, tools, food, drink, and personal treasures. Sometimes beloved horses, dogs, and even servants would accompany their master on this final voyage, either voluntarily or through sacrifice. The symbolic significance of the ship burial reflected the Viking understanding of death as a journey rather than an end. The vessel that had carried the warrior across earthly seas would now transport them to the halls of the gods. This concept was deeply rooted in Norse cosmology, where the ship represented both practical transport and spiritual transition. The direction of the ship was carefully aligned, typically pointing toward the sunset or the northern lights, believed to be reflections of Valhalla's gleaming walls. The blóts ceremonies formed another cornerstone of Viking spiritual life, marking crucial moments in the agricultural and seasonal calendar. These sacrificial rituals established and renewed connections with the Norse gods, ensuring continued divine favor for the community. The most significant blót occurred at midwinter, when the community would gather to honor the gods and ancestors during the darkest time of the year. The ritual involved the careful selection and ceremonial slaughter of prized animals, their blood collected in sacred vessels and sprinkled over altars, statues of gods, and even the assembled participants. During these ceremonies, the meat would be carefully prepared and shared among the community in a sacred feast. Nothing was wasted, as even the bones and hides held ritual significance. The sharing of this sacrificial meal created bonds between participants and the divine, while reinforcing social ties within the community. The midwinter blót often coincided with significant political gatherings, where important decisions were made and disputes resolved under the aegis of the gods. Seasonal blóts marked critical points in the agricultural cycle. Spring ceremonies honored Freyr and Freya, seeking fertility for fields and livestock. Harvest celebrations gave thanks for abundance and stored luck for the coming winter. These rituals combined practical agricultural concerns with deep spiritual significance, reflecting the Viking understanding of the interconnected nature of physical and spiritual worlds. Viking marriage ceremonies represented complex social and spiritual events that could last for days or even weeks. The timing was carefully chosen, often coinciding with favorable phases of the moon or significant festivals. Preparations began months in advance, with both families negotiating bride price, dowry, and inheritance arrangements. The ceremony itself involved multiple stages, each rich with symbolic meaning and ritual significance. The marriage ritual typically began with a symbolic sword exchange. The groom presented an ancestral sword to his bride while receiving one from her family. These weapons represented not just martial prowess, but the joining of family lines and the protection of future generations. The bride's keys, symbol of her authority over the household, would be ceremonially presented, along with other tokens of domestic power and responsibility. The ceremony culminated in a feast that served multiple purposes, celebrating the union, witnessing the legal contracts, and ensuring divine blessing for the marriage. Special roles were assigned to various gods. Thor was invoked to bless the union, Freya to ensure fertility, and Odin to grant wisdom to the new couple. The feast featured specific ritual foods and drinks, with the sharing of mead being particularly significant, giving rise to the term honeymoon. The political and social implications of these marriages extended far beyond the immediate families. They created networks of obligation and alliance that helped maintain peace and prosperity between communities. The ceremony's success was seen as an omen for the future of both families and their wider communities, making the perfect execution of each ritual element crucially important. These significant ceremonies, ship burials, blóts, and marriages, were more than mere customs. They were pivotal moments that maintained social order, ensured cosmic harmony, and marked major transitions in both individual lives and community history. Their elaborate nature and deep symbolic meaning reveal the sophisticated spiritual understanding of Viking society, while their practical effects in maintaining social bonds and political alliances demonstrate the Vikings' practical wisdom in combining sacred and secular concerns. Norse mythology served as the philosophical foundation that shaped Viking understanding of existence and their place within the cosmos. The mythological framework presented a sophisticated worldview that explained both natural phenomena and human behavior through interconnected stories and symbols. The concept of Yggdrasil, the world tree connecting 9 distinct realms, represented their understanding of the universe as a complex, interconnected system where actions in one realm could have far-reaching consequences in others. This mythological structure provided practical guidance for daily life while addressing fundamental philosophical questions about existence, fate, and human purpose. The Norse concept of weird or personal destiny was not viewed as predetermined fate, but as a complex weaving of personal choice and cosmic influence. This sophisticated understanding encouraged both personal responsibility and acceptance of life's uncertainties, creating a practical philosophy that balanced individual agency with cosmic order. The runes held a position of unique significance in Viking intellectual and spiritual life, far beyond their role as a writing system. According to mythology, Odin himself discovered the runes after hanging 9 days and nights on Yggdrasil, sacrificing himself to himself in pursuit of wisdom. This origin story imbued the runes with profound spiritual power, making them both a practical tool for communication and a means of accessing divine knowledge and power. Each rune possessed multiple layers of meaning, a phonetic value, a literal meaning, and deeper esoteric significance. The practice of runic divination involved not just reading the symbols, but understanding the complex web of meanings and associations each rune carried. Rune masters were highly respected for their ability to interpret these meanings and apply them to specific situations. The casting of runes for divination followed precise ritualistic procedures, with each position and combination carrying specific significance. The Skalds played a crucial role in preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge through their intricate verses. These poet-historians were more than entertainers. They were the living repositories of lore, history, and spiritual wisdom. Their complex verse forms, with their demanding patterns of alliteration and internal rhyme, served as sophisticated memory devices that enabled the accurate transmission of knowledge across generations. The position of skald required years of training, not only in the technical aspects of verse composition, but in the vast body of mythological and historical knowledge necessary to create meaningful allusions. Skaldic poetry served multiple functions in Viking society. It preserved historical records, celebrated heroic deeds, and transmitted religious knowledge. The intricate metaphorical language of kennings, poetic circumlocutions that often drew on mythological references, helped maintain and transmit cultural knowledge while demonstrating the poet's skill and learning. A single kenning could encapsulate complex mythological stories and religious concepts, making skaldic verse a sophisticated form of cultural preservation and education. The Norse pantheon was remarkably complex, with deities representing not just natural forces, but various aspects of human experience and social interaction. Thor, while known as the thunder god, also represented the maintenance of cosmic order and the protection of human society. Odin embodied not just warfare, but the pursuit of wisdom and poetic inspiration. Freya's domain encompassed both love and death, reflecting the Viking understanding of life's interconnected nature. These deities played specific roles in different rituals throughout the year. During spring planting, Freya's blessing would be sought for fertility and growth. Warriors preparing for battle might seek Odin's favor through specific ceremonies. Thor's protection would be invoked during journeys and major undertakings. The complexity of these divine relationships required sophisticated understanding and careful ritual observance. The interaction between humans and gods was conceived as a reciprocal relationship maintained through ritual practice. Specific ceremonies were developed for different purposes, each with its own protocol and requirements. The blot ceremonies, for instance, followed careful procedures that varied depending on which deity was being honored and what outcome was sought. This created a complex ritual calendar that structured both religious observance and social life. The Vikings' intellectual tradition included sophisticated systems of symbolic interpretation. Natural phenomena, animal behavior, and dreams were all understood as potential messages from the divine realm requiring careful interpretation. This led to the development of complex systems of augury and divination, practiced by specialized priests and seers who underwent extensive training in these interpretative arts. The material culture of the Vikings reflected these spiritual and intellectual traditions. Their art, particularly their intricate animal-style ornament and complex knotwork patterns, encoded sophisticated symbolic meanings while demonstrating remarkable artistic skill. These designs weren't merely decorative, but often carried specific spiritual significance and protective power. This rich cultural and intellectual tradition was not static, but constantly evolving through contact with other cultures. The Vikings' extensive trading networks brought them into contact with diverse religious and philosophical systems, leading to sophisticated cultural exchange and synthesis. This intellectual flexibility allowed them to adapt and incorporate new ideas while maintaining their distinct cultural identity. The preservation of this knowledge across generations required sophisticated educational systems, both formal and informal. Young people learned through a combination of direct instruction, participation in rituals, and absorption in the rich storytelling tradition. This educational process ensured the continuation of both practical skills and deeper spiritual understanding, maintaining the complex web of knowledge that supported Viking society and culture. The Viking Age was marked by complex interactions between Norse paganism and Christianity, creating a fascinating period of religious and cultural exchange. When Vikings first encountered Christian communities, their initial contact was often through raids on monasteries and churches. However, these violent encounters gradually evolved into more nuanced relationships through trade, settlement, and diplomatic exchange. Christian monasteries, despite being targets of Viking raids, served as important points of cultural contact. These institutions were centers of learning and literacy, and their influence gradually penetrated Norse society. Vikings who settled in Christian lands or engaged in long-term trade began to adopt elements of Christian culture, often while maintaining their traditional beliefs. This created interesting hybrid practices where Norse and Christian elements coexisted. Trade networks played a crucial role in religious and cultural exchange. Viking merchants traveling to Christian territories often found it advantageous to accept Christian baptism, at least nominally, to facilitate trade relationships. These prime-signed Vikings occupied an interesting middle ground, officially marked for eventual Christian conversion while still practicing their traditional beliefs. Trading centers like Hedeby, York, and Dublin became melting pots where different religious practices and cultural traditions intermingled. The gradual conversion to Christianity followed different patterns across Scandinavian regions. Denmark, due to its proximity to Christian Europe, experienced earlier and more systematic Christianization. King Harald Bluetooth's conversion in the 960s marked a significant turning point, though the process of religious change continued for generations. Norway's conversion was more dramatic, driven by kings like Olaf Tryggvason and Olaf Haraldsson, who used military force alongside missionary efforts. Sweden's conversion was more gradual, with old and new beliefs coexisting well into the 12th century. The adaptation of religious practices revealed remarkable flexibility in both Norse and Christian traditions. Christian missionaries often incorporated Norse customs and sacred sites into Christian practice. Churches were built on ancient holy grounds, and Christian festivals were timed to coincide with traditional Norse celebrations. The celebration of Yule, for instance, was gradually transformed into Christmas, while retaining many pre-Christian elements. Political alliances significantly influenced religious conversion. Norse rulers increasingly saw advantages in adopting Christianity, which provided access to European political networks and administrative systems. The Christian Church offered literacy, organizational structures, and new forms of legitimacy that appealed to ambitious Norse leaders seeking to consolidate their power. The process of conversion created various forms of religious syncretism. In many areas, people maintained aspects of both belief systems, calling upon both Christ and Thor for protection or incorporating runic magic into Christian prayers. Archaeological evidence shows Christian crosses worn alongside Thor's hammers, suggesting people hedged their spiritual bets during this transitional period. Women's roles underwent significant changes during this religious transformation. While Norse tradition included powerful religious roles for women as vulvas and priestesses, Christianity introduced a more patriarchal religious structure. However, evidence suggests that women often maintained influential spiritual roles within household religion and folk practices, even after official conversion. The impact of Christian literacy transformed Norse culture. The writing down of Norse myths and sagas, ironically preserved by Christian scholars, helped maintain knowledge of pre-Christian traditions. This literary preservation, though filtered through a Christian lens, provides much of what we know about Norse religious practices today. Conflict between religious systems often manifested in practical ways. Christians' refusal to participate in traditional blóts ceremonies created social tensions, as these rituals were important for community cohesion. The Christian prohibition of certain foods during fasting periods conflicted with Norse feast traditions. These practical conflicts often proved more challenging than theological differences. The transformation of burial practices provides clear archaeological evidence of religious change. Traditional cremation and ship burial gradually gave way to Christian inhumation, though the process was not uniform. Some communities maintained dual burial grounds, while others created hybrid practices that satisfied both traditional and Christian requirements. This period of religious interaction and conversion fundamentally shaped Northern European culture. The resulting synthesis created distinctive forms of Northern Christianity that retained strong elements of Norse cultural traditions. This legacy continues to influence Scandinavian culture, from calendar customs to folk traditions, demonstrating how ancient practices can survive and adapt through periods of profound religious change. The enduring impact of Viking rituals and spiritual practices continues to resonate through centuries, shaping not only our understanding of Norse culture, but also influencing modern spiritual and cultural expressions. The sophisticated ritual systems developed by Viking societies played a crucial role in forging their distinct cultural identity, creating bonds that transcended geographical boundaries and united diverse Norse communities across vast territories. Viking rituals served as powerful mechanisms for cultural cohesion and identity formation. These ceremonies created shared experiences and memories that defined what it meant to be Norse, establishing patterns of behavior and belief that distinguished their culture from others. The careful preservation and transmission of these ritual practices through generations helped maintain cultural continuity, even as Viking societies expanded and encountered new influences. The survival of Norse traditions in modern cultures is particularly fascinating. Contemporary Scandinavian societies retain numerous customs that can be traced directly to Viking Age practices. The celebration of Midsummer, still a major festival in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, maintains elements of ancient solstice rituals. Traditional wedding customs in these countries often incorporate symbols and practices that harken back to Norse marriage ceremonies, such as the exchange of rings and the prominence of family symbols. Modern neo-pagan movements, particularly Asatru, have revived and reinterpreted many Viking religious practices. While these modern interpretations necessarily differ from historical practices, they demonstrate the continuing appeal of Norse spiritual traditions. These contemporary adaptations often focus on the ecological and community-building aspects of Viking ritual, resonating with modern concerns about environmental stewardship and social connection. The role of ritual in human connection, so central to Viking society, offers valuable insights for contemporary communities. Viking ceremonies created multiple layers of connection between individuals, within communities, between humans and nature, and with the divine realm. This holistic approach to ritual practice provides a model for understanding how ceremonial activities can strengthen social bonds and create meaningful shared experiences in modern contexts. The preservation of cultural memories through ritual has proven remarkably durable. Stories, symbols, and ceremonial elements from Viking culture continue to appear in contemporary art, literature, and popular culture. These cultural echoes demonstrate how ritual practices can serve as vehicles for transmitting cultural values and understanding across generations, even in dramatically changed social contexts. The Viking approach to ritual as practical spirituality offers valuable lessons for modern society. Their integration of spiritual practice with daily life created a holistic worldview that balanced practical needs with spiritual fulfillment. This practical approach to spirituality continues to influence contemporary Nordic cultures, where religious and secular elements often blend seamlessly in cultural celebrations. Archaeological evidence continues to provide new insights into Viking ritual practices, enhancing our understanding of their sophistication and complexity. Recent discoveries have revealed previously unknown aspects of ceremonial sites and ritual objects, demonstrating that Viking spiritual practices were more varied and nuanced than previously understood. These findings help bridge the gap between historical accounts and material culture, providing a more complete picture of Viking ritual life. The adaptation of Viking rituals to changing circumstances demonstrates remarkable cultural resilience. As Norse societies encountered Christianity and other cultural influences, they found ways to maintain core elements of their ritual traditions while adapting to new social realities. This adaptive capacity offers lessons for modern societies facing rapid cultural change. The role of storytelling in preserving ritual knowledge remains relevant today. Just as Viking skalds maintained cultural memory through poetry and saga, modern storytellers continue to transmit understanding of Norse traditions through various media. Digital platforms now serve as new vehicles for sharing and exploring Viking cultural heritage, reaching global audiences interested in Norse spiritual traditions. The influence of Viking ritual practices on modern pagan and New Age movements highlights their continuing relevance to contemporary spiritual seekers. Elements of Norse ceremony and symbolism have been incorporated into various modern spiritual practices, demonstrating their adaptability to new cultural contexts while maintaining core elements of their original meaning. Looking toward the future, the legacy of Viking rituals offers valuable perspectives on community building and cultural preservation in an increasingly globalized world. Their example shows how spiritual practices can adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining cultural distinctiveness and creating meaningful connections between people. Which Viking ritual has fascinated you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments and join us on this remarkable journey through Norse spirituality. Don't forget to subscribe to the Medieval Archives for more incredible historical explorations. Together, let's uncover the enduring wisdom of these ancient practices and understand their relevance to our modern world.